Welcome along to the feature match area, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Riley, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to our final round of Swiss here. Round number 15, of course, coming your way. I'm in the booth, joined by Simon Gertzen, the Pro Tour champion. We've just crunched the numbers as to what's going on here with the win and in situation. And Simon Nielsen and Duncan Tang are sitting poised to take over this round here and get themselves into the top 8. Oh, we do indeed have the wrong graphic at the top there. Excuse me. It is Loic Lebois and Laurent Calligaro. So, Scapeshift facing off against Burn. I certainly got confused there where I saw a twin deck playing a Goblin Guide on turn 1. But Le Briand, he's off to the perfect start here. Goblin Guide, turn 1 after a mountain. That's what you want, Simon.
Yeah, and he's holding relatively simple hand of, I think, 2 Boros Charm and 2 6. Well, how much damage is it? 14 damage in hand?
14 damage in hand. Wow, look at that. 2 Boros Charms, 2 Lava Spike and a Lightning Bolt here. Calligaro down to 18 already, down to 17 now after this fetch land. Excuse me. He seemed to already have a Lightning Bolt. Not an interesting debate amongst many of the Scapeshift players as to how much interaction to play in the main. Not all of them playing Lightning Bolt. We see these sort of glass cannon type versions where they play 0 red decks in the main. Or red cards, I should say.
Yeah, just having mountains just because of Valakut.
Secure a Tribalder. This is what the Scapeshift deck wants to do. But essentially, Simon, they are more or less goldfishing here.
Yeah, actually, both players are in a sense.
Yeah.
The only interaction that we could have seen was with that Goblin Guide, or actually we saw some interaction with it. Of course, the Titanshift deck can interact with Goblin Guides in multiple ways. However, that's not really the main point. The main point is just to bring the life total down with burn spells.
So Calligaro already knocked down to 13, and with 10 more points in hand? Well, 13 more points in hand. So all Le Briand needs to do here is just point those cards at Calligaro's dome, and I don't think Calligaro is going to be fast enough here.
I seriously doubt it, because even if you land a Primeval Titan, that's not going to win you the game. You need to have a lethal Scapeshift. However, Loic is on 17, so there is a little bit of hope at least. You don't need that extra land for Scapeshift to be
Calligaro is going to need to get to 7 lands as quick as possible, and certainly one of the new pieces of technology for the Titanshift deck in order to get that Scapeshift out nice and quick is, of course, Hour of Promise. Hour of Promise, a recent addition from Hour of Devastation, and really important purely Simon because of its cost. It costs 5, which is much, much more achievable on even turn 3 than a 6-cost Titan.
Yeah, interesting how you can call a 5-card sorcery in Modern cheap, but of course for this deck, 5 is not all that tricky, not all that difficult.
I think we just saw a hard cast Search for Tomorrow. Calligaro making things a little bit more difficult for us by keeping his graveyard off screen. We might see if we can get that put on the screen so we can see what's been going on in there. Calligaro continuing to develop his mana. But I think it's going to be too little too late, because Le Briand here can ding him for another 4.
If Le Briand draws an untapped red source, he might just 9 point of burn for 3 mana.
Jeez, yeah.
At Laurent's face, that's incredible.
That could happen here, because Calligaro is going to face down a Boros Charm in just a few moments. And then after that, yes indeed, we could just go Bolt, Bolt, Spike. Or Spike, Bolt, Bolt.
Either order is fine.
Bolt, Spike, Bolt. Getcha. Valakut comes down for Calligaro. Boros Charm you. Down to 9. And Loic Le Briand, if he's got a mountain on top of his library, that is all she wrote. It is a Goblin Guide.
But he's not... Is there any chance that he's facing a lethal Scapeshift? I don't think so.
No, as he's on 17.
Sometimes there are ways for Laurent to play another ramp spell in the turn where he casts the lethal Scapeshift. So that's kind of the only way that Laurent could do this.
So Summoner's Pact here. He's going to go and search out a card. The problem here for Calligaro is he doesn't have enough green sources. If we had something like, for example, as Primeval Titan comes down as well, if we had something like a Farseek into a Scapeshift there, Stomping Ground, in addition to what I would imagine would be another mountain, so he can get that Scapeshift trigger. Yes, that Valakut trigger. But Loic Le Briand, reveals his hand, and with Caligaro with no answers left to bring to bear, he's going to go down. That was, I would say, more or less the perfect burn hand there.
Yeah. Also didn't draw too many creatures, not too many lands, just the most efficient burn spells, but still with that turn 1 Goblin Guide.
Yep, and that's so important as well, stripping a card out of Caligaro's hand. But look, at this stage, Caligaro as well, not in a position to interact. We saw the Lightning Bolt, but there aren't other cards. There's not Kitchen Finks. There aren't other, there's no counter spells. There's no way for him to really to defend against these spells that are being chucked at his dome. That changes after the sideboard, however. Scapeshift, of course. Obstinate Baloth comes in. Any other number of cards that could swing things. Although I don't know how much Caligaro has in terms of interaction.
Yeah, at least one Kitchen Finks and a Thragtusk in his sideboard as well. So
Thragtusk.
He's coming prepared.
Yeah, that's these are cards that are a bit more on the fringe of the sideboards inside Titan Shift decks, but certainly very useful. Kitchen Finks I haven't seen at all.
I was also a bit surprised. We see Loik here with his whole sideboard in his hand.
And this is the way that you should sideboard. You should shuffle your 15 cards into your deck every time and then take out another 15. Not a lot of people do this, as it does tend to be time-consuming, a little bit more mentally taxing, but it can hide key information from an observant opponent.
To be fair, Loik didn't shuffle it completely in. He's just basically hiding it a little bit.
Still should do it. So, coming out. Looks like Searing Blaze maybe coming out. Not interested in those Relics of Progenitus either. Grim Lavamancer maybe hit facing the chop as well. Certainly Destructive Revelry we don't need.
Quite a lot of artifact removal. 4 Shattering Spree, 4 Destructive Revelry and 2 Shattering Spree. He really didn't want to lose against Affinity, I think.
Destructive Revelry also really very, very good against, random other decks, white decks that are going to bring in Leyline of Sanctity, blue-white decks against Detention Sphere perhaps, although that's going maybe a little deep.
White Leyline probably the biggest reason.
Absolutely. Very difficult for a burn player to win through a Leyline, of course. Destructive Revelry opening up a new angle of attack for burn players who are wanting to disenchant things and still get that damage in. This has been a sideboard all-star, you would say, since it was printed in Theros.
No. 1 less damage than Smash to Smithereens, but it hits enchantments.
Yeah, which is very, very important.
Which are tricky for red to deal with.
Yeah.
So I think actually Loik is not sideboarding all that much. You don't really have anti-ramp cards in your burn sideboard usually. You know what the matchup demands from your deck, and you have to win before they gain too much life and kill you with Scapeshift or Primeval Titan.
Some people tend to categorize the burn deck as something of a combo deck, Simon. I mean, often we see combo decks as being a combo of card A and card B, or sometimes, A, B, and C. And, that's obviously the orthodox configuration of a combo deck. But burn plays like a combo deck in the sense that they need a critical mass of certain pieces. And, there's a lot of interchangeability between that. Lava Spikes aren't that different from Lightning Bolts in this instance. But my point here is that you cannot over-sideboard with a burn deck, otherwise you'll end up just diluting your game plan, in the same way that you can't over-sideboard with Storm.
Yes, that's absolutely true. If you become too reactive after sideboarding, don't think that's a danger in this matchup, but in others, then suddenly you just might not have the staying power to deal 20 with your opening hand plus how many cards? 5, 6 cards. You're not drawing that many. You're not seeing that many cards because you want the game to be to end quickly.
And this is why we see in Luc Brillon's main deck here. This is why we see just 4 ofs all the way down. Goblin Guide, Monastery Swiftspear, Charm, Spike, Bolt, Helix, Rift Bolt, Blaze, Shrine, Skullcrack, all of these things straight up 4 ofs. It's a lean and trimmed machine. Nothing fancy, nothing funny going on.
I think there is something funny going on.
Oh, tell me.
4 Shrine of Burning Rage.
That's an interesting piece of technology. He's obviously identified it as being one of the best cards. He's playing 4 copies of it.
0 Eidolon.
That is that is definitely interesting. That escaped my notice for a second there. Yeah, what is going on there?
Loik decided to play an 8 creature burn list, replacing the Eidolon with Shrine of Burning Rage, which makes for a completely different game plan. He is basically saying, if I'm on the draw, the Eidolon is not so good. There are certain matchups where I don't want the Eidolon, Also, there are fatal pushes everywhere. I don't really want my opponents to be able to deal with all my creatures. On the other hand, huge bursts of damage are great against certain decks, especially the Death Shadow variant, maybe.
Yeah, right.
4 Shrine of Burning Rage, to me, is a big surprise. But 12 and 2, I'm always looking for innovative ways to build this burn deck. Because even though, let's say, 85% of your deck is fixed, you do have these little levers where you can actually tweak for the metagame you're expecting.
Yeah, a little bit of room for innovation here. Shrine of Burning Rage. I like the point that you made about large burst, like a burst of damage, a big chunk of damage is what you want to point at a Death Shadow player, for example, because often they'll put themselves at 7 or 6 life or something, and a Shrine of Burning Rage can indeed represent that amount of damage. I mean, it ticks up very quickly.
If you have a Shrine, also your evaluation of certain cards and matchups or opponent's threats changes. You don't really mind killing your opponent's creatures. Let's say, for example, if you're playing against a Collected Company deck, if you have a Shrine that's ticking up at the same time.
Because each of those is also going to give you one sort of 1 point in escrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Caligaro does have a couple of other interesting cards that may come to affect this matchup. The first of which is Courser of Crucifix. This card, incidental life gain, stapled onto a body that blocks both Goblin Guide and Monastery Swiftspear very, very well indeed. I mean, you mentioned in the board we see things like Thrag Tusk and life gain cards like that, but set up in the main, I like the Courser of Crucifix.
Yeah, and it's a card that is just good for the Scapeshift deck, right? It's not... Actually, Laurent has quite a lot of interactive cards in Game 1.
Roast, Scapeshift.
More creatures, more
Lightning Bolt.
creatures. He's also playing 2 Prismatic Omen. Interesting.
Swiftspear comes down on turn 1. That's the turn, of course, you want to play it. Caligaro, without a turn 1 play, he would obviously be hoping for a Search for Tomorrow or something like that. As we see the Catacombs hit the bin. And Stomping Ground comes into play now.
In this case, I would absolutely expect a turn 2 Tribe Elder. Maybe Farseek, but you don't keep a hand without a play, at least on turn 2.
No. Prismatic Omen in the hand of Caligaro.
Lightning Bolt, also an option just to stem the bleeding a little bit. Interesting list by Caligaro. This is not your typical Scapeshift deck.
No. Sweltering Suns in the main as well. Prismatic Omen obviously at its best when you can, because it means you can Scapeshift with 6 lands out instead of 7 and still ding them for 18. Turns those pesky forests into mountains as well as the Valakuts. I think that's the big thing.
Which means you can actually just deal almost infinite damage, right? You just get all your Valakuts and somehow...
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, with Scapeshift, you can... I mean, if you've got a Prismatic Omen and a Scapeshift, you can actually Scapeshift for 4 Valakuts and do like 70 damage to them. Monastery Swiftspear getting in again, as we see, as you said, Simon, a secure Tribe Elder. Blocking and, gaining a little bit of life by proxy here. Back to Caligaro, who's on the play, which obviously makes all the difference here. And Courser of Crucifix. This is what you want.
With the land drop still available.
Ding! Off the top, the mountain. Gain 1. Does Le Briand have a response?
Well, the nice thing about playing lands is that it doesn't use the stack, so now the triggers on the stack, the life gain triggers on the stack.
The life gain trigger is on the stack, which can be responded to.
Laurent should definitely reveal the top of his stack. That has nothing to do with the
trigger. Yeah.
Whether Log has a response or not. Now there might be a Skullcrack, there might be all kinds of shenanigans. 4 toughness is also a lot.
Yeah, it's super important. It dodges Lightning Bolt, it blocks Goblin Guide, and also Monastery Swiftspear, really. I mean, you have to play 3 cards in a turn to get it to tussle with the Courser, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
And Laurent has found an untapped, painless red source, which he can use to cast Lightning Bolt.
Skullcrack, Lightning Bolt. So was that Skullcrack was not cast in response to the Courser trigger?
Pretty sure it was.
Okay, would have had to be, really. That would be very silly otherwise. So Caligaro down to 15.
Caligaro also playing it really safe. Just killing the Swiftspear right there. Doesn't want any shenanigans to happen.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, that's an enchantment.
Oh dear, that's the liability of the Courser of Crucifix. Because it is an enchantment, it can be destroyed by Destructive Revelry, of course.
Very timely draw, by the way.
Very, very timely indeed, as we see the Destructive Revelry undo some of the good work that the Courser had done here. Caligaro takes a further 2. Although it did, it drew a card and gained a life, which isn't too bad.
No, it also traded for the Revelry, basically.
Caligaro on 10. Elder, joined by a Prismatic Omen. So now everything's a mountain. Well, everything's in everything, really.
Yes, which is not all that relevant, but Caligaro can cast whatever he wants. It's quite clear that he is not holding Obstinate Baloth, because he could have just cast that.
That's obviously a huge swing here.
And you want to cast it before your opponent has Skullcrack effects available again.
We don't see any Atarka's commands in the list that has been put together by Lac Le Briand here.
This Atarka's command has fallen almost completely out of favor. And if you're playing a very special 8 creature burn deck, then it's also completely understandable that you don't want Atarka's command. You cannot make use of the full effect. The pump your creatures is basically not doing it. Now Scapeshift is lethal. Valakut is interesting, but of course not enough.
So Valakut comes down, and that is going to mean that Le Briand takes 3, because the Valakut now is a mountain and counts the other mountains, including the Forest Mountain that is on the battlefield. So Caligaro now, every land is a lightning bolt. But is it going to be enough here?
It doesn't mean that he's not in danger of dying to creatures, right?
No, because they can just be picked off piecemeal, for sure.
So especially with the active Tribe Elder, he will just he will just shoot them at will. But this draw by Loic Le Briand is once again tremendous.
So double Boros Charm, Caligaro, and a Rift Bolt at the face, and Caligaro goes down to Lac Le Briand after that double Boros Charm play, followed up by a timely rip off the top there. And unfortunately for Laurent Caligaro, his top 8 dreams are all but over.
Yep, didn't find what he needed there.
Unfortunately for him, he will not be making a top 8 appearance, but Lac Le Briand, he'll have his fingers crossed, and we'll be hoping to get across the line here, and we'll see exactly how things pan out as our top 8 continues. But for now, the Burn player looking a good chance at making it all the way to the top here. So, moving on now to another table, we do have Simon Nielsen also playing Scapeshift against Samuel Marty on Dredge. Now, we've seen Marty already in the feature match area several times this weekend, as indeed have we seen Simon Nielsen. Simon Nielsen, another plays with a lot of heart, this guy. Always got a smile on his face. He loves the game, and he's dug very deep to keep himself in it throughout the entire tournament, because, of course, he picked up his losses very early, Simon.
Yes, that's what you said. Now, once again, we are going to look at a matchup in game... Well, this is game 2, but in a matchup where Titan Shift doesn't have a lot of interaction with what Dredge is trying to do. Mm-hmm. And you can see that Dredge already picked up game 1. I think that's not really surprising.
No, there aren't a lot of ways for Nielsen to interact with what Dredge is trying to do, and it does some absolutely busted things. I mean, there's some spicy ones in Nielsen's deck list. Pia and Kira and Nalar in the main, 1 copy of Thrag Tusk, as well as 2 copies of Roast, as well as the old Sweltering Suns. But, yeah, not a lot going on for him in terms of graveyard hate. In the sideboard, do things change?
It's not a lot. I'm going to be honest. 2 Relic of Progenitors and 1 Anger of the Gods. If you ask me, that's like the bare minimum to actually consider having a Dredge sideboard at all.
And oh dearie me, for Nielsen, the light at the end of the tunnel is going even flickering out here, because a Leyline of Sanctity has come down on turn 0 for Samuel Marty.
Which is such an interesting piece of technology, because when you think of Dredge sideboard, you think of Leyline of the Void. Leyline of Sanctity was very surprising to me when I first read it. But here we see why it actually makes sense. Yeah. You're suddenly saying, okay, let's play a longer game, because you're not going to beat me with Valakut.
Marty, Dredge's life from the loam here. But essentially, yes, you're absolutely right in saying so. This means now that Valakut triggers can't be pointed upstairs at Samuel Marty. Having said that, all of his creatures die to Valakut triggers.
But they also are really good at coming back.
That is true.
Conflagrate is very good at dealing 10 points of damage.
They don't die for long. That's certainly a good point. And already now, Insolent Neonate coming down, and already we see a stock graveyard for Marty. A couple of prized amalgams.
Who doesn't have huge dredges here at the moment, didn't find Narcomoeba or Bloodgust, but this could explode next turn.
Yeah, a slower start, I think it's fair to say, for Marty here. As we're back to Nielsen, he's going to cast this Search for Tomorrow. He didn't crack the Elder, interestingly.
Sometimes you can just do the math and then you know that you'll never need the mana the next turn. Okay, not quite sure what was clarified there. Actually, Prismatic Omen is interesting. It's not a ram spell, but because it allows your escape shift to be lethal earlier.
Yeah, it kind of is.
It kind of represents a ram spell, like a virtual ram spell.
It means the escape shift can be played, as you say, with one land fewer, which often means that it can be enough early. So Valakut off the top for Nielsen. He's going to cycle his Sheltered Thicket, and he draws Prismatic Omen, which he can cast.
And in his deck, that's only a one-off.
Is it really? Just the one-off. Interesting. The other thing it does is, of course, with it allows you to double dip with your fetch lands, because you can play a Wooded Foothills, which is a mountain, go and fetch another card, which is also a mountain. Oh, and look at this, getting in there with the Secure Tribe Elder. Now, Nielsen does have answers to the leyline in his 75. Reclamation Sage is the one that jumps out at me, of course, but Nature's Claim, are these cards you're bringing in against Dredge?
I certainly don't.
No.
Would you expect to have a target for them in game 2?
Well, Leyline of Sanctity has kind of come out of left field here. But it's got to be something that Titan Shift players are aware of, these hexproof type effects. Nielsen himself is playing Witchbane Orb, which is very useful not only in the mirror but also against decks like Burn. It often comes down on turn 3, which can be fast enough. So, Marty dredges Stinkweed Imp. New piece of technology and Driven to Despair for him. Gemstone Caverns.
Looting? Flashback looting? Or...
And where is it, he says. Yes, indeed.
And this has to hit something now. 10 cards deep, maybe 8.
So, flashback the Faithless Looting, dredging Stinkweed Imp.
Still looking. Aha.
Dredging Golgari Thug. And finally we have the Narcomoeba. Discarding the Stinkweed Imp. Oh, mate, you just dredged that. Chucking it away already? What's going on there? So, Narcomoeba brings back these two prized amalgams, and all of a sudden, Marty has an instant board. Just add water.
Yeah, but given that this is turn 3, this is a really slow dredge start.
Yeah, that's true. It's certainly a slower start than we've accustomed to seeing with Dredge. Marty laying out his graveyard. Gone for the fan before. We had the column approach now, but fans instead now. Interesting piece of technology from him. So, Valakut can start chucking triggers around right now.
Scape Shift can start killing...
Hello.
Killing creatures,
Are
but
we
not
going to see
opponents.
Reclamation Sage? Are we going to see Reclamation Sage here? Because we have had Summoner's Pack cast. It's going to be Primeval Titan.
Searched.
Yep.
Land.
So, Primeval Titan. And obviously that Wooded Foothills can tap for mana thanks to the Prismatic Omen. So,
And
double Valakut, just mow everything down.
this is just crazy, right? Every land now...
12 damage.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
In this...
6 damage,
yeah,
but these ones 12.
So, you're going to have to play a game where you shoot down every creature that the Dredge player puts onto the battlefield.
This may come down to decking. It may come down to decking. If Simon Nielsen has... So, this deck plays 26, 27 lands. It then plays 14, 15, 16 2-mana spells that get lands. He has enough lands here, essentially, between his fetches, his Farseeks, and whatever else, right, to continue to burn everything that Marty plays.
But on the other hand, Dredge can reuse and reuse and reuse all of their creatures all of the time.
That is true, but half his deck is in his library. Well, sort of half his deck is in his library. That is true. Half his deck is also in his graveyard. Really, really interesting texture to this match here because of this Leyline of Sanctity.
Marty has to kill that Titan, right? Because that's what's really threatening him. He doesn't have to win quickly because he has the right leyline. He needs to conflagrate that Titan.
Titan does rather handily get around the Leyline of Sanctity.
He has 6 cards, so I think it's not enough, right? No, he just barely doesn't have enough to conflagrate the Titan.
5 cards in hand. What are we going to see here? Life from the Loam. That is going to be enough there to conflagrate, but now he doesn't have the mana to pay for it.
No, he's going to be delayed for 1 turn.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're saying that the cards in Zimon's deck or Simon's deck are so valuable, do you actually try to not get too many lands out of your deck?
Right now he's got no reason to. He's got nowhere to point. He wouldn't if he attacks with the is Primeval Titan a May? Is it a May ability on the Primeval Titan?
Good question.
Because if it is not,
I've never not wanted to search for.
I've never not wanted for them either. But he may indeed not want to search them out. No, of course it is. It's search for up to 2. You can just search for 0. You can just fail to find them, of course. Let's see if he actually has to put the trigger on the stack there.
Yeah, I think you can always fail to find. You can just say, I didn't find any lands in my
It's also
library.
you may, so you don't actually have to search at all. Because there are cards that punish you for searching your library.
Archive Trap.
Yeah. So Primeval Titan, and Nielsen is going to go searching here. Okay. So nowhere to point those...
I hope those are May triggers.
I hope that's a May trigger as well, because otherwise it's going to have to go straight at him.
No, I'm pretty sure that Valakut is also a May.
It is indeed. You're absolutely right.
That would be absurd.
That'd
right?
be a beating.
You search for 2 Valakuts and suddenly there are like 12 triggers that you have to
Yeah.
point at yourself.
He's got all 4 out now. Or he's got all 4 Valakuts on the battlefield. So 12 damage per land played for Nielsen because of this Prismatic Omen.
I think Nielsen just wants to maximize his chances of finding more Titans.
Okay. So that might be a reason to thin your deck out.
Yeah, you want to find Titans, Baloth, Thragtusk, anything that's actually threatening to win the game through the leyline.
Conflagrate now. Just as you mentioned, he's going to discard 6 cards to do 6 damage. 6 for one-ing himself here. 7 for one-ing.
Yeah, and being very happy about it.
Yeah, it's a good trade. So discarding 6 cards to conflagrate to deal 6 to deal 6 damage to the Primeval Titan. Titan down. Marty left with 2 cards in hand. Golgari Thug was what I saw, I think. And Bloodghast comes back.
Yeah, Bloodghast is kind of perfect here. It does trigger the amalgams, so and it's not really in Marty's interest to put as many creatures as possible on the board.
No.
He just wants to force Nielsen to deploy another land, basically.
So Marty, who used to have such a beautifully fanned out graveyard, now is just all over the shop. Look at this. As we see the amalgams come back thanks to the Bloodghast. He's going to have to fix up this graveyard game because it is just wild. So you can see Scapeshift in hand for Simon Nielsen, in addition to, I think, a freshly drawn Mountain. And we are going to see Marty fix that up here. Nice little fans of 5. Very good. Good stuff from him. Oh, gone for the fan of 6 and then 2. Interesting approach he has to this graveyard organization.
I know how Simon Nielsen feels right now. This is the moment where you're thinking, am I just going to lose my win and in because my opponent had a white ley line?
Yeah.
Look at him. What can he even has a few fetch lands in play, right?
Yeah.
He's representing so much damage. This is all 4 Valakuts, right?
Yep.
So it's basically...
Ooh, Anger of the Gods. That's huge.
Especially because Marty exposed the Golgari Thug.
That is huge. That was hidden away. And Nielsen, all of a sudden now, gives himself a huge amount of breathing room. Marty, Hellbent, Dredge's Life from the Loam, Leyline, Stomping Ground, and a Cathartic Reunion. getting rid of those 2 prized amalgams and the Bloodghast, that was huge game.
That was the Singleton Anger of the Gods from Nielsen's sideboard, and it was the only way to stop Marty from forcing him to continuously kill his army over and over again. Nielsen, which Nielsen could have done, but still, it's not what he wants to be doing. 20 minutes left. This is also a consideration.
Yeah.
We said 39 points is where you want to be, and even that is not 100% safe. Although you're very likely to make the top 8 with 13 wins and 2 losses.
Gemstone Caverns once again.
Unintentional draw is a disaster.
An unintentional draw knocks them both out?
Most likely. Like I said, there are some obscure cases.
Sorry, Gemstone Mine, not Gemstone Caverns. What am I talking about? But go on, sorry.
Yeah, but that's it. 37 is much, much less safe than 39.
So Marty continuing to dredge through his deck. He's got most of his graveyard, cards in his graveyard right now. Secure a Tribe Elder for Simon Nielsen.
That's threatening 1 point a turn.
Yep. Could be enough. 11 turn clock here for Marty, although he has about 11 cards left in his library. He's going to have to stop dredging here.
I think at the speed that Marty has been dredging, it's less about Nielsen being threatened to be decked, but just the dredge deck not being able to win through all these instant mountains basically being threatened.
He's dredging again. The 2 final prized amalgams are amongst the bottom 10 cards of his library.
That's tough.
That is rough. So, Life from the Loam being cast once again. Marty continues to eat through his library here.
I thought there was a way with Golgari Thug, putting more and more cards on top of your library all the time, or just preparing Conflagrates for 9 and 10 somehow. You can get your hand up to that size.
There is a prized amalgam hiding out in the graveyard. We've just spotted under the Stinkweed Imp here. 3 more cards in hand for Marty, thanks to the dredge there.
But let's be honest, Simon will not take any creature damage this game.
No, not a single point. Shoot both of these, get you for 1. That forest, of course, triggering 4 Valakuts, thanks to Prismatic Omen.
Oh, Marty has to go up to 7 cards in hand. Then...
But how many Conflagrates does he have left?
He cast only 1.
He's cast only 1?
He cast 1 on the Primeval Titan.
Okay.
And most lists play 3. I hope he didn't board 1 out.
He's playing 3.
Because that's just too important of a card.
Well, 3 in the 75. I wonder how many remain in his 60 here. So we have a look. 7 cards left in his library. These guys are going to have to pick up the pace here.
How many cards in hand? He stopped dredging Life from the Loam, right?
Bloodghast comes back.
No, that's not a winning strategy. Yep. He's just giving up a turn, basically.
Yep, because we know that Nielsen has infinite lands, essentially. Gets in for 1 again. Secure a Tribe Elder. Getting it done. And now we're getting to the point where another Primeval Titan off the top is going to be an absolute nightmare for Marty to deal with. Bloodghast off the top for Marty here. And he's going to cast it too. Hard cast Bloodghast. Stomping Ground brings back another Bloodghast, which brings back a prized amalgam. And we will see all 3 of these creatures dealt with very tidily by any land off the top. No blocks.
Bloodghast can't block.
Nope, that's it. Search for Tomorrow. Hard cast. Fetch out another basic land here. You can see Simon Nielsen's basic land game, probably the strongest we've seen all weekend. This guy absolutely on point with these ancient full art lands. He's absolutely crushed it. Full credit to him. So 4 Valakut triggers. One of those poor creatures is taking 6. And Nielsen, a guy who plays a lot of flair, a lot of class. We saw him in an earlier round killing himself with double packed after being dead on board. He packed it twice, failed to find anything, and then died to the first trigger. Big fan of this fellow. Bloodghast come back. Amalgams come back. But of course Nielsen still has fetch lands to play, and a Relic of Progenitus as well. And that's going to be all over Red Rover here for Samuel Marty's graveyard, and indeed for him the match. So the game, I should say. Simon Nielsen picks up game 2. 15 minutes remain for them to find a result in game number 3. Simon Nielsen, despite having Primeval Titan, Prismatic Omen, 4 copies of Valakut on the battlefield, didn't do a single point of damage to Samuel Marty through that Leyline of Sanctity, but I think he's going to have to come prepared. I think that Reclamation Sage has to come in, that Nature's Claim, it has to come in.
Just one Sage, I think.
Just the Sage?
Because you do have the Summoner's Pact as well. That is true. And you can even win against the Leyline. I wouldn't overboard because Nature's Claim. I don't see it.
Okay,
if I'm
all right.
honest.
No, I mean that's a good point. You bring in the Reclamation Sage, so you sort of by proxy have 3 copies of it thanks to the
2 pacts.
The 2 pacts. Now, the issue here is, of course, we saw multiple ley lines brought in from Samuel Marty, and if we have more than one enter the battlefield on turn 0, if we have him hardcast them off the Gemstone Mine as well, that could be problematic.
There's also this point, and I just saw Marty doing it. Marty doesn't have to keep the ley lines in.
No.
So if you go overboard with enchantment removal, you might be happy to see Nature's Claim in your opener, but there's just no ley lines.
Well, let's see what Nielsen has boarded out. The Lightning Bolts are out. The Roasters come out. You can get a good look at what other cards he's chosen to take out here. I think I just saw Reclamation Sage under those Primeval Titans.
And that's an easy card to put in.
Yeah.
Like I said, investing 1 out of your 60 is an easy choice.
Especially when you've got that toolbox approach thanks to Summoner's Pact as well. So both players happy with their deck configuration by the look of things, and they're going to have to hustle to find a game result here because, as we mentioned, it's going to be tricky for these guys to continue their campaign for top 8 if they pick up a draw at this stage.
But this game should be much easier on the clock because the white Leyline will most likely not make an appearance, and if it does, Simon Nielsen is prepared.
I love the way he crushed that game, though.
Yeah, with the Singleton Prismatic Omen, knowing that creature damage was just out of the question.
Yeah, and so instead he goes after the alternate win condition, and he got there as well. And it seemed to me very early on he knew how he was going to play it out, and he did a great job of getting there.
Yes, and that without drawing another Titan or a Thracta. So he was really basically playing a single threat game. I don't want to count the Sakura Trap Elder that got in for a few points.
So now these players shuffling up, ready to get into their 3rd game here. The decider, of course.
I don't know. 19 is a lot of life, and Nielsen was very smart to not, get a shock land untapped at some point. I think Marty probably had some way of realizing that going for creatures was just not going to work out, and save all the cards and all the dredges to just get the number of lands and conflagrates.
So just get to a point where he can cast, say, 3 Life from the Loams in 1 turn, and then the conflagrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow going for a win where you cast 2 conflagrates, and you don't even dredge Stinkweed Imp, because you don't want a 1/2 Death Touch for 3 mana. What you want to dredge Life from the Loam because it's 3 more cards.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes good sense here. In any case, Nielsen picking up the game 2 win. I mean, look, he'll be hoping to lean on those Relics of Progenitus as well to sort of neuter Samuel's game plan here. Bit of an ordinary looking hand here for Marty, and he's going to send it straight back. Nielsen has seen some of the cards that he's interested in. I can see an Anger of the Gods amongst them, and Simon, that's a key card, especially when you're facing down 2-3 amalgams.
That's huge because
get them right out of here.
Because Dredge cannot play around the turn 3 Anger of the Gods most likely.
No, that's true, and I mean there aren't a lot of ways for Dredge to really come back from that either. They don't have ways to counter spells. They don't have ways to interrupt that kind of interaction, and so Anger of the Gods is Stone Cold Killer.
And you know that these decks don't play 3, so it's not like you can play around them because you know they have them, but
they
have 1 or 2, and it's just basically if you play around it all the time, if you play scared all the time, you're basically giving yourself worse chances.
And you're playing into your opponent's hands as well. That looks like a terrible hand for Samuel Marty. He's gone from not enough lands to too many. I think that was a 5-lander. Jeez, this is bad stuff for him. Simon Nielsen sitting pretty on 7 cards, but Samuel Marty down to 5. How badly does mulliganing affect the Dredge deck?
It's not that bad, because you can always, with just a few cards, let's say Neonate, Reunion, Stinkweed Imp, you can be off to the races. So this deck can mulligan down to 4 cards and still have a brutal start. However, we are looking at one of the less consistent decks in Dredge and one of the most consistent decks in Titan Shift.
I think that's a great observation. Consistency is certainly the name of the game with Titan Shift. Now, it has many weaknesses, glaring weaknesses when it comes especially to combo decks and that sort of thing. But this deck is playing 27 lands, and as we said, just all the Farseek effects in the world. This deck is consistent. It's
the beauty of having a win condition that is connected to your land count. So something that you want to do anyway, deploy your mana, is also winning you the game.
So down to 10 minutes on the clock, or just under that, as Marty keeps his 5, and he's going to kick things off with a Faithless Looting here, putting him down to 17, I would imagine, after a Stomping Ground comes down. And Nielsen happy with his 7. Of course, the Anger of the Gods is going to be the biggest point of leverage from him, but it'll be interesting to see if he also has that Dream Star. It's interesting, when you're playing Scapeshift, it's what probably, if you enjoy the nut draw, this deck is going to give you the nut draw more often than any other, I think, because it's so easy to have Search for Tomorrow into Farseek, into Hour of Promise. That happens so much more than you'd think.
Yes. Although your nut draw is a little bit weaker
That's true.
Than the Affinity nut draw or some combo nut draws.
But if you just enjoy that feeling of being like, yes, this 7 couldn't get much better, then Titan Shift is the deck for you. Stomping Ground. And we're going to see Search for Tomorrow. So, a great start here for Nielsen. It's Dredge, Dakmor, Salvage, flip over. And a Narcomoeba is a good hit for Marty here, although nothing else to bring back with it. Bloodghast also hiding out in his graveyard.
I think he was primarily interested in that land because he wants to be able to flashback Faithless Looting. Although this is surprising. Why didn't he play the Salvage? I thought he was forced to go up to 3 mana. Maybe he has another land in hand.
Okay. Secure Tribe Elder. So Nielsen is certainly hitting his straps here with the 1 mana into the 2 mana ramp spells. Another Search for Tomorrow in hand. We see a block and a sack as Nielsen takes 1 point of damage in the air.
This looks like a relatively easy game for Simon.
It's unfortunate for Marty that Nielsen is punishing his already bad start of a mulligan with more or less the dream start. And that Anger of the Gods, a nice backup plan and insurance policy for him, Simon.
Yeah, it's even too early to cast it, right? Because there's not really anything going on.
No.
Marty is only just now getting some decent dredgers into the graveyard. Here you see the banning of Grave Troll having an effect, a subtle effect. These mulligans and these anemic starts happen much less if Golgari Grave Troll is still legal. Just
purely because of the number of cards you can get through with it?
Yes, you just upgrade basically all of your dredgers, dredge for 1 more, and you can also play more of them. Make the deck a bit more consistent.
Yeah, things like Golgari Thargas are, obviously miles away from something like the Grave Troll there. And the Grave Troll as well, just a respectable threat on its own. In the late game, you bring it down as a 10-10, whatever else, can get the job done.
Yeah, that was the best part, right? It was your engine card, and then you just cast it for huge value as well.
So Nielsen now sitting on 4 lands. You can go up to 5 here on turn number 3, and this is where we see Hour of Promise make all the difference. Now, Simon, I want to explore this a little bit because Hour of Promise is it's scratched a few heads because people say, well, it's that much worse than Primeval Titan, but there's no 6/6. It doesn't continue to get lands. It's just a Primeval Titan without legs, essentially. But in this situation, this is where the Hour of Promise shines. On turn 3, Nielsen has access to 5 mana, and if he has the Hour of Promise in hand, he could cast it. That's huge because that gets him to 7 mana the next turn, which is ready for the Scapeshift. Primeval Titan doesn't give him that opportunity because he has to wait again till turn 4.
Exactly, and it's going to be interesting in the future to see if and how many Hour of Promise we see. I really also like this approach with the Prismatic Omen. I didn't realize how it was kind of doubling up as a ramp spell, and Nielsen, and I think also in the previous ramp deck we covered, the Prismatic Omens were kind of taking the Hour of Promise slot.
This is a very aggressive deployment of this Anger of the Gods here for Nielsen. Very aggressive indeed, because of course he's only snagged two creatures from that, and no amalgams, which is certainly what I would be worried about.
Yeah, this is only so aggressive because Nielsen is threatening lethal next turn. He has the escape shift. He has 6 land. He's just waiting to win next turn. And Dredge just doesn't have this kind of interaction where you have to be scared of Thoughtseize or anything like that. In fact, I think he made the right play if you consider the new card from Hour of Devastation, which might force him to discard.
So more dredging here, as we see the 3 prized amalgams hit the bin.
The despair side.
If driven to despair.
If Marty dredges, the dredge is driven to despair, flashes back despair. Nielsen might lose his combo depending on how things end up.
Because he could have to discard cards.
It's a fringe case, but it's definitely at least theoretically possible.
I guess with the win in hand, it makes sense to just
play it safe.
Yeah, play it safe by the water, put the final nails into the coffin here. But Nielsen, all he has to do is untap, play a land, and play a 4-mana sorcery, and he's going to win the game on the spot. Marty putting himself down to 17 means that he is within range. Valakut, Scape Shift, sacrifice all my lands, search out for 6 more mountains. 1, that's 3 damage. 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18 damage. All at you. Marty checking that they're all mountains and extending their hands. Simon Nielsen snags himself the win. He's done exceptionally well. Simon Gertzen, next to me, we've already said. This guy picked up early losses. He's just 1 and 1 and 1.
He had a recent top 8 in Amonkhet Limited.
He's looking to double down on it, I'll tell you that.
Simon Nielsen becoming one of the more feared. No, that's not really true, right? He's just such a nice guy.
I don't think it's possible to fear him.
Yeah,
I don't think you could fear him in any conceivable. He's just he's honestly. I mean, I'm not trying to be too over the top here. One of the just genuinely best people I know. He really is. I mean, it may have come across a bit. I do try to keep the bias out of the coverage and that sort of stuff, but you cannot help get behind a guy like Simon Nielsen because it's so hard to dislike him. He's such a great bloke. And look, this isn't taking anything away from Samuel Marty. What a great record for him. 12-3 all the way to the death. He's done really, really well indeed. Snag himself some cash, snag himself some pro points. Congratulations to him. But look, I'm very happy indeed that Simon Nielsen got up and about because he's fought hard, he's dug deep, and he's a great bloke, rewarded with an excellent result as well. On to one of our other tables now, tied up Alberto Galicia and Tony Ramis Pascual. These guys have snagged themselves 3 minutes extra time as part of being in the coverage area here. And we've got this Abzan midrange versus this counters deck. So an Abzan mirror in some senses, but both of these decks taking very different approaches, Simon.
Absolutely, completely different. The Counters Company deck is a creature-based combo deck, and Abzan midrange is just what it says in the title. You grind out some value, you have some planeswalkers, you have some removal. In this particular case, you sometimes attack with Treetop Village. Not where you want to be, but you have to use all of your cards to maximum efficiency to keep up with some of the raw power in the format.
Collected Company coming down here for Tony Ramis Pascual. This is one of the key cards, of course, in his deck. All sorts of combos hidden away in it, and Collected Company enables you to get them.
And it's a hit, but a weak one, I would say.
Okay. Selfless Spirit, an interesting inclusion against Alberto Galicia. Maybe he's worried about Damnation.
Which Alberto has in hand.
And Fatal Push is a nice answer to the Spirit so he can maximize the value out of his Damnation. But right now, again, a bit of an anemic board state, although Galicia on 5?
This is actually an interesting race.
It's not going to take too much here.
If you Fatal Push the Spirit here, maybe if you don't draw anything, you get in for 3 again. It's not where you want to be, but sometimes Treetop Village is what's needed.
Well, away goes the Spirit. It's back to Pascual now.
And for Pascual, it's clear what he needs. He needs Eternal Witnesses, he needs Collected Companies, he needs these cards that generate multiple pieces of value.
Eternal Witness is going to help him get there as he brings back this Collected Company. So 9 minutes remaining in this match as our round timer counts down to 0. 9 minutes extra given to these two players. Marsh Flat's the play for Galicia, and he has to say go.
And this is going to be really difficult now.
Pascual with the Collected Company.
Wow.
And a Viscera Seer as well here.
this Damnation doesn't look great.
No.
I don't think it's what you really want to be doing in this matchup.
No, Collected Company runs rings around it, doesn't it?
You want to put pressure with your own bigger, beefier creatures.
One of which, of course, could be Kalitas, the trader of Get, which Alberto Galicia has just drawn here. Simon, what do you think of that?
I like it. It's an alternative to Anafenza. Another way to make sure that some of these, I sacrifice my creatures and they continuously come back. Kind of combo approaches doesn't work.
Yeah.
It is a scary card in Standard, and it's just, like I said, it's clunky. This Damnation is, I don't think it's going to be enough.
4 mana. It's going to be Kalitas. And Pascual here with an opportunity to respond to the Kalitas here, because if he hits Vizier and Kitchen Finks, he can go off in response, but not when the Kalitas is on the battlefield.
Exactly, and that's why we saw Pascual also stopping Galicia a little bit. I think the fact that it's positioned over the land actually means it's on the stack.
I would imagine so as well, because here Pascual could gain an arbitrarily large amount of life if he manages to hit his combo pieces here. 6 cards off the top. The Viscera Seer already online, so he just needs Kitchen Finks and a Malira type effect, which it does not look like he has found.
No, a weak company. There's a Gavany Township, which he does not get, of course.
So Devoted Druid, Birds of Paradise, and Noble Hierarch, the only options here for Tony Ramis Pascual. Not the cards he was looking to see.
Interesting decision point right there. You do have the option to just sacrifice some of your creatures to Scry before Kalitas comes down, because when Kalitas is in play, I don't think you want to be doing that.
No, definitely not. Giving your opponent a free 2/2 is definitely not what you want to be doing. So, Devoted Druid, Noble Hierarch, the play as Kalitas comes down. Oh, no, we are going to see this line that you said. We're going to see the Scry effect.
Yes, and I'm not surprised. Pascual needs to find now either an answer to the Kalitas, or another company, something impressive of his own.
He's got one that's giving him pause to think here on top of the library. Wonder what it could be, because he's certainly having a good old think about it. Looks like we've had a fair few cards already exiled, or maybe that's his sideboard. Be surprised. That one is also going below. Okay. And another card also going underneath for Pascual. And now we see the Kalitas finally enter the battlefield. It's back to Pascual, top of his library. We didn't get a look at that at all. It is a path to exile.
He found one of the very few solutions.
Jeez, that was a very timely rip here for Pascual. He's not playing many, is he?
Did he sacrifice his Witness?
He did.
I don't know if I like this, because you have to find the solution to the Kalitas. And if you do, you could have attacked for 3. How valuable is it to have the potential for the combo?
Well, he wouldn't have drawn it had he not sacrificed the...
sacrifice the Devoted Druid instead.
Oh, I see.
So that you just put on more pressure on your opponent.
I see. Well, I guess he values the combo a little bit higher than the 2 damage here. But Galicia is on 4. Treetop Village is going to get up and swing its monkey arms around. It's an ape, I should say. I shouldn't say monkey. I have the librarian tearing my arms off. Galicia.
The Discworld Librarian.
Yes. You got there.
I got it.
You got there. Damnation sitting in hand for Galicia alongside, I think it's a Marsh Flats. And now the Devoted Druid hits the bin. Viscera Seer, the only card remaining. Pascual draws. Fixes up his graveyard a little bit. 5 minutes remaining in this match. These guys both fighting, of course, for a top 8 slot, you would think. Galicia down to 3. And here is the Vizier of Remedies.
The other combo piece.
Yes, the other 2 having already been hit the bin after Viscera Seer opened them up and had a squiz inside the old gut boxes there. And Marsh Flats hits the bin as Galicia putting himself down to 2. Wow. That's big game.
Galicia has to... Damnation is hoping for a 7th mana source to get in for another 3 damage. And then Pascual's next 3 cards have to be blanks, because he gets 2 scries and a draw step.
So Galicia here, looking to, as you mentioned, cast the Damnation and also attack with the Treetop Village. Of course, he has to cast Damnation.
There is one other line where he can go on defense with the Treetop Village.
Okay, all right.
But I don't think he's winning the long game, the way things are shaping on. Does he have an untapped source? Does he have a basic land?
I think he found a land. It's a Tectonic Edge. It's a Tectonic Edge. That's key here. Damnation. We see the Vizier of Remedies. Scry. Bottom.
First shot.
Visceracia. Scry. And a pause here. Both of these creatures dying anyway to the Damnation, so Pasquale getting his value, and he's having to think about this one. Simon, what could you think? What could it be? What could it be, mate?
It's not good enough. It goes to the bottom.
Away it goes.
I think Alberto made a tiny mistake here by revealing the Tectonic Edge before casting the Damnation. He should have left only Overgrown Tomb and Treetop Village untapped. So
the slow roll here for Pasquale. We don't get a look at the top card of his library. I think it's a gold card. He said go. It could be... Well, no, if it was a gold card, he would have cast a Tectonic Edge away the Temple Garden. Pasquale down to 3. Tectonic Edge, not good enough to get rid of that one. And then we have Treetop Village. He checks the next card of his library, but it is Treetop Village getting over the top, and Alberto Galicia has snagged himself a win here above Tony Ramis Pasquale, whose Counters Company deck was not able to go the distance. Simon Gertzen, what a close one.
Impressive.
Jeez. All right, so we got more round 15 Magic coming your way, but we've got to take a quick break. On the other side of this, Simon and I will be here to take you through the final Time Walk match from GP Birmingham. So stick around, everyone. We'll see you in just a few moments.